Hey, welcome back to the Think Bigger Real Estate Show. I'm your host, Justin Stoddart, where my mission and my passion are to help you think bigger, bring people in front of you that expand your thinking, because when that happens, a marvelous thing also follows, which is your business starts to grow. As your business grows, your life gets more options and you are able to create a greater impact in the world. And that is my, again, mission and passion. I'm very excited today to talk about the friction factor. We live in a digital world, and it's all too often there's lots of connections. We've got lots of friends through all kinds of social networks, but not very many deep connections. And I've got truly an expert here with me today to talk about this. Let me introduce Jim Remley. First, before I kind of give a full bio on you, Jim, thanks for being on the show today.
Hey, my pleasure. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much.
You bet. You are a big thinker, and let me validate that to all those who are hearing about Jim for the first time. So Jim lives in a small town in Oregon called Medford, Oregon, and you'd never believe that so much success that he's created would come out of a small town. He's a 30-year real estate veteran. He grew a company to 17 offices here in Oregon, sold that. He now runs one of the largest brokerages in Oregon. He's got 160 agents doing about $1 billion in volume. Pretty impressive little group of producers out of Medford, Oregon. I love it. His company is top 500 company in America, according to Real Trends. And he now runs a coaching platform, in addition to his robust brokerage and business, erealestatecoach.com. We're going to get more into that here in a minute. But thank you again, Jim, for being on the show, and super excited about today's topic.
Hey, I'm excited to be here.
Let's
you got a reputation down in Southern Oregon, my friend, so it's a good
hopefully it's a good one.
It is.
So let's get into this, Jim. I grew up in an era where the internet was introduced to my high school, and I thought to myself, that's the weirdest thing ever. Like, this is odd, right? Whereas we have a generation that's coming up that does not know what life would be like without the internet. Like, when I tell my kids, hey, guess what, kids? Dad's older than the internet. Mind's blown, and they're like, you're a dinosaur, Dad. And but now it's so common. All of us are really reliant upon it, aren't we? Like, entirely. Our lives revolve around internet connection.
It's absolutely true. I'm older than you, so I grew up when we had Apple II computers before the internet. The lab at school programming on these little tiny Apple IIs. But I just read an interesting article. It was by David Bryan at MIT Review, and he said this, that what's happening right now with technology is that we're seeing less and less human interaction within all technology. So technology is being built with humans being less and less and less a part of the technology itself, because human friction is where most systems break down. And it's very interesting when you look at it. I mean, if you look at a lot of the things that we're probably all using, I'm sure you're using and I'm using. My wife and I just signed up for Blue Apron, right? So that's a delivery service for meals. And the idea here is that we don't have to go to the restaurant. We don't have to talk to a waitress. We don't have to go to the grocery store. It's literally just sent to us, arrives on our doorstep. We come in, we open it up, and we make the meal, right?
So, yeah.
Like Uber and Lyft. Before, I'm old enough to remember when you get in a cab. When you get in the cab, you'd have to tell the cab driver where you're going. You have to have a conversation. You'd have to tip the cab driver at the end. But now, you get into an Uber, you literally don't have to have a conversation, because the system is built to have no conversation.
Interesting.
I've already put it in there. You open the door, get in, open the door, get out. You don't even have to talk to the guy. These systems like that. I saw Captain Marvel a few weeks ago at the movie theater, and they had this scene where the main character is in a Blockbuster video, and you're like, oh, that's so cute. I remember going to Blockbuster Video. But now everything's streaming, so we don't have to go talk to people at the video store. We don't even have to go to the movies. We just stream everything to our phones and our devices. So what you're saying is this natural and kind of consistent move towards less and less and less and less human interaction. This morning in bed, my wife was doing, she was shopping, put our whole grocery cart into Instacart, and it's going to be delivered at 6 o'clock. We don't have to walk to the grocery store. It's all being delivered to us.
It's crazy, isn't it?
It's an interesting world, right?
It is an interesting world, and a lot of these things are very convenient. I mean, every one of those things that you just described, Uber to Blue Apron to grocery delivery, I'm all like, that's awesome. Like, that sounds like super convenient, right?
Exactly.
And that's, I think, where really technology can benefit. What's the other side of that sword? Like, if this is a double-edged sword, right? Like, what's the problem with this?
So people say to me, well, that's all great. I love it. I use it. But does it to real estate, and it absolutely applies to real estate. There are pieces of the real estate, what's called puzzle or supply chain or the way we work that are being webized chunk by chunk. We all watched as Zillow and Realtor.com kind of entered the market. Now buyers can do all search themselves, but now showings are starting to go that direction. We're seeing in large cities systems like Tor, which is a lockbox you can put on a house and can be remotely accessed so that there doesn't need to be an agent present at the showing. Think of it like when you go to do an Airbnb vacation rental and they put a keyless entry in. If the buyer's been qualified, they hit a button and that lets them into the house. Of course, the seller has to sign off on it, but this is technically being used right now. So imagine now you have showings. You can go search and you can show yourself the house. Every time one of these little things is taken out of our plate and made frictionless, it takes a proposition away from us. So what happens is we become commoditized and we become one of many. I just saw a study about the number of agents in the business right now. We're at another peak. We had a peak in 2005 with about 1,000,004 agents. We're back up to that number. And some people would say that's more like 2.4 because not everybody's a realtor. But the number of transactions is plateauing at about 5 million transactions. So you think about 2 million realtors or 2 million agents in the country, and there's 5 million transactions. The number of people
It doesn't work.
Consumer has to choose from is massive. So in any market, like in Portland, I'm sure there's 10,000 agents or more.
Close to 8,500 in the Portland metro area, but that doesn't include Vancouver, right? Which is kind of Portland area, and there's a whole,
So that means that the consumer can just have all these massive choices, and when we get commoditized, it becomes an issue for us. We have to find value back into the transaction. And that's my focus with agents.
You're speaking my language. I see the writing on the wall, right? With all the technology that's happening, even the insurance industry, like financial advising industry, these industries have kind of hit it before us. You kind of see everything from robo advisors, again, to Flo and the Lizard on, TV selling insurance. I actually had a friend of mine talking to me, so in fact, before I share that story, let me kind of share. There could be a bit of a doom and gloom about this, couldn't there? It'd be like we are an endangered species, as in the real estate industry, extinction is coming. Consumers will have no need for us. I believe that is true if your value proposition remains what it's always been.
I agree 100%. 100%.
And
if you look at the travel industry, where travel agents were completely disintermediated, that was a prediction for us 15 years ago. Everybody said, oh, that's going to happen in real estate. The difference between us and travel is that we provide a high-level interpretation and consultation with our clients that can't be easily webized. All the pieces of it might be webized right up until we give consultation and interpretation and provide trusted guidance through the transaction. And that's the key, is trust and people trusting what we're giving them. And I think that's the difference. It's very similar to the medical profession. I think our parallel is more medical than it is travel. Mm-hmm. So look at medical. You and I bet you've done this. Your wife's done this. I've done this. My wife. We've all gone to WebMD, and we've all self-diagnosed ourselves, and we were all dying of cancer, right? Or some huge ailment we thought we had. Right. And it's really wrong because we self-diagnosed ourselves. But that's the difference, is that we are still going to be that doctor that's going to actually come in and interpret the real issue and find the real pain point and really provide real solutions. And I think that's what we have to sell.
So let's unpack this a little bit, because in fact, the story that I was going to share and I stopped myself was about the travel industry, because people that's an industry that gets picked on often. And I was actually having a conversation with a friend of mine who's in insurance, and he said, we were booking a lifetime trip to Europe, and he said, I got this, right? There's tons of resources online. There's reviews everywhere. But he said it got to the point to be overwhelming. This is a once in a lifetime trip. And he said, finally, I was feeling overwhelmed because who do I trust? Who do I know? Who do I know is going to actually give me the right advice? And so he finally said, this is a big enough travel or trip that I'm going to hire a professional. I'm going to hire a travel agency who can just decide for me because they've been there before. And I think, to your point, the booking a trip to San Jose, we don't need travel agents anymore, right? No. However, something that's going to actually be life determining, meaning, in real estate, it's because it's such a wealth determiner. People need advisors, right?
Mhm.
And I think exactly to what you're saying is that the value proposition of a real estate agent has to move beyond the functionary tasks and into the fiduciary tasks. And like you said, position themselves as a doctor, which means that there's a whole group of people that aren't willing to put in the work or get the coaching or become an advisor to where they're not going to be in a spot to be able to advise people like a doctor would advise on health, right? And those people are going to be the ones that are going to be overtaken by technology. Those that are going to rise, just like a well-paid travel agent now. Yes, they do exist for people just like I just described, right? Agents are going to need to become that in order to be well paid, or I like to say they'll become, technology operators like a barista at running a cappuccino machine, and getting paid similarly, right?
Exactly. The interesting thing about that, and I think you hit the nail on the head when you talk about life change. When you come to life-changing decisions, you always want a trusted advisor. And so that's the differentiation point, I think, with what we do as realtors, is we're at a life change moment. And people want consultation. They want their hand held through that life change moment. They want advice. And so that's the difference. I think what happens, and it's happening right now, is that we had this huge kind of shift in the industry a few years ago, and it's been a shift towards transactional real estate, where you see people completely focused on, the numbers. Every transaction is just a number to them. And what happens is your business falls apart eventually, because that's the same way that the client looks at you, as a number, as one of many people that could serve me. And we've got to move away from that. We got to move from transactional real estate to relational real estate. And that's the only way we can win in this business. But the good news is, I don't think it's doom and gloom. I think it's an advantage. There's going to be very few agents that are willing to go relational because they just don't want to invest the time, the effort, and the resources to going completely relational. But I just had an interview myself a couple days ago with a guy that I just brought in the company, Steve Thomas. He did $17 million in his second year in the business in the small town of Medford, Oregon.
That's awesome.
I mean, I'm sure it's one of the number one agents in the country in the second year in this business. I mean, incredible. Yeah. And I interviewed him. I said, Steve, what was your secret? I said, you must be doing social media. You must be doing Google ads. You must be doing all the things that all these agents are being told to do. He goes, no, I'm terrible at all that. Here's what I do. I call 60 people a week that are in my 50 VIPs. Those are people that already refer to me and like me and trust me. And my goal is to set 4 to 5 networking meetings a week. And that means I'm going to coffee or lunch or dinner or drinks with someone every single day. And that's it. That's his complete plan for success. And it's all relationship, just building relationships with people.
Which is, becoming a lost art, like we started off, right? Talking about, is that most agents spend that same amount of time trying to figure out how to automate a drip campaign so that they can stay in front of people. And it's, at the end of the day, when people have that wealth determining decision to make, like that, sifting through their email to see who dripped on them last is not going to even stand a chance against the person who sat down with them for 30 to 45 to 60 minutes to find out where they're at, where they're headed, what their plan is. Not even necessarily about real estate, but just about life. But in that, of course, real estate's going to come up. I agree with you. I see agents that are dominating, that are just willing to go sit knee to knee with people because it's so uncommon in today's world.
It's a different mindset. And what I tell my agents is your number one job as a real estate professional, from drip campaigns and mailings and all that we're doing, videos and blogs and websites, your number one goal of all of that activity is to be sitting across the table from someone. It's human interaction. We get that, and we just think it's about touches. It's not about touch. It's about human physical conversation. I just saw a study that said that for every 30 conversations, live conversations an agent has, they average 1 closed transaction. And that's a great sort of base measurement of everything we do. We're always trying to move away from conversation and find some technology that will replace that, but nothing replaces it. Nothing replaces human interaction.
So once people get into those conversations, kind of in our last few minutes here, Jim, let's talk a little bit about that consultative conversation. What do you think are the key points that an agent needs to be bringing up in addition to what's happening in that person's life, right? Like once they know what's happening with that person, where they're headed, what are key things you think that a real estate advisor should be asking, should be knowing, to where they can really deliver value in today's world?
So that's an interesting question. And I think what it boils down to is we always lead with what we think they need, but really what we need to lead with is what they actually need. And the way you do that is through asking great questions, but also studying what the market's telling us. So NAR does a study of this every year. They do the home buyer and seller study. And it's a massive study. Tens of thousands of people are interviewed, and they're asked, what are the top 3 things you want from a buyer's agent? What are the top 3 things you want from a seller's agent? And the answers are pretty much universally the same every year. There's slight changes. But with a seller, we know that the number one thing they want is help in finding the right buyer for their home, helping pricing the property correctly, and helping with the terms negotiation. So 2 of those, price and terms, are pretty much negotiations areas. And so are we speaking to that? Are we talking about how I negotiate price, how I negotiate terms, how I market the house in a way that's unique? And I think it all boils down to answer your question, differentiation and how we differentiate ourselves as opposed to every other agent that's coming behind us. Interesting study that was done recently, kind of to this point as well, was this idea of referrals. We always are training to referrals, of course, but we've all heard notes calls Popeyes, notes calls Popeyes. It's kind of been a mantra for years, right? But there's a study out that shows when we should be engaging people for referrals, what's their highest point of sending us a referral. And people are 4 times more likely to send us a referral in the experience itself. So within the experience. So it's just like us. If we're about to go to a restaurant, we're much more likely to be texting people, Instagramming it, Facebooking it, talking to our friends about it, talking to our families, or during the meal. If we're having a great experience, we're much more likely to be talking about it. You go out 30 days, 60 days, 90 days from that experience, highly unlikely going to be talking about it again. So that's when I'm training agents, I'm talking about this magic kind of circle around every experience you're having with a buyer and seller. And are you fully leveraging in that and having conversations about referrals within that moment?
It's a great idea. Yeah, it's brilliant. I love it. I would love to spend more time with you. Unfortunately, I've got a hard stop, but I do want to ask the last signature question, Jim. And I'm going to invite you to come back on the show again because this has been a really great conversation. Before I go to that final question, let me just put up here really quickly a link to your real estate coaching school, I'll call it, right? erealestatecoach.com. Jim, tell us really quickly, what would agents get from there that they wouldn't be able to get in other places?
So one of the things that we provide mastery courses. So the mastery courses are me coaching people one-on-one through live video and through video. So in addition to that, they get what we call paired downloads. So as I'm talking about for sale by owners, open houses, sphere of influence, business to business prospecting, they can download the scripts, the text, the emails, all the tools and systems we're talking about. So it's really one-on-one coaching, but at a super affordable level. In fact, I'm going to give your students, your audience, another discount off the price that's on there. So anything you're looking at buying, use the webinar 25 coupon code, you get 25% off.
Perfect. Webinar 25, put into the coupon code.
And you get that. So all of our classes are designed to be rapid. A lot of classes take hours and hours and hours. Our classes are focused, nuts and bolts, right, to get you out in the field working.
I love it. I love it. Yeah. Instead of being a professional student, we want professional agents.
We want out in the field working.
All right. So I appreciate that. And thank you again for the kind offer to this audience. I would encourage anybody and everybody to go take a look at what Jim has created. Again, with his bio that I read to you guys, there's no reason why you shouldn't be learning from this guy. So I appreciate that very much, Jim. So signature question, you're a big thinker, no doubt. Behind me here, I've got this logo to remind everybody what this show is about, to think bigger. Tell me, what is something that you do on a regular basis to be sure that you continue to expand your own possibilities, right? To be sure that you continue to be a big thinker and don't get stuck in kind of small thinking. Describe to us, coach us, teach us on what that looks like for you.
There's 2 things that I do consistently that I think help me on that front. One is I'm listening to books as I'm driving. The average person in their car spends 597 hours a year in their car. It's a university on wheels. So I'm listening to a book every day. I'm probably going through 2 to 3 business books a week, and from that, pull ideas all the time. The other thing is you want to be somebody that's sharpening your axe. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Successful People says we got to sharpen the axe. And that's not only learning, but also rest and recharge. So you got to plan vacations. You got to rest and recharge to stay on top of your game. You can't be working 24/7. you got to take some time to yourself.
I love it. Great stuff, Jim. Really appreciate that. Want to encourage the audience to go think bigger as a result of what Jim's sharing with us today. You're truly learning from a master, and I feel honored to have you on the show, Jim. So if this has been valuable to those that are listening, whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching it in the future, do Jim and I a favor and comment that, maybe even tag somebody or share it. There's just been some great nuggets of wisdom that Jim's brought to us. So again, as an appreciation for his time, please let's get this out to more people. So Jim, thank you again for your time, and I would encourage again the audience to go think bigger. All right, my friend, talk to you soon.